Got it. Okay, Mr. Bernstein, take it away, please.
Hey, welcome to Tinderbox Meetup with Michael Becker. It's Saturday, February 10th, and I'm Mark Bernstein, the designer of Tinderbox. If you're not already on the Eastgate list, get on the Eastgate list, the Tinderbox page. If you are interested in coming meetups, they're announced on the forum.eastgate.com. There's an online calendar. It's great to have. Next week, we've got a really amazing meetup coming up on the new weblog revival with Jack Beatty and Dave Rogers and lots of practical Tinderbox. But now here's Michael Becker.
And by the way, I don't think that's next week. I think it's the 24th.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Sorry.
And I think, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you said next week is Chris Aldrich.
Yes, I believe that's right. I will double check that, but yes, I believe that's right. I've got them switched.
Okay. And on that note, can you send me, so I can market Chris's session. Can you send me his bio and contact info and so I can market his session as well? Awesome. All right. All right, everybody. Welcome. Thank you very much for the intro, Mark. So welcome to the Feb 10 Tinderbox session. So typically the way we run Tinderbox meetings, for those that may not know, is we go around the room and have new people introduce themselves. What we then do is we loosely start setting an agenda of what we want to talk about today. If we have a theme like we just talked about, next week, Chris will talk about tools for thought. The week after that, Dave Rogers and Jack will be talking about blogging with Tinderbox, which is good. We had a prep call for that yesterday, and it's going to be wickedly good. And then we just jump right in. We also have added a new element to our Tinderbox meetings starting last week, I think, where we want to call it 10 minutes in Tinderbox. So what that means is someone raises their hand and volunteers to give a demo about a particular Tinderbox feature, and explains how that feature works and and how that works. So with that in mind, I volunteered to do today's 10-minute demo, and I'm going to be talking about highlighting in Tinderbox. However, if you have a Tinderbox feature or capability that you have used before and you like it, please raise your hand, reach out to myself or Mark, and say, I want to do the 10-minute in Tinderbox session for XYZ date. And you got it, and we'll be good to go. So with that in mind, let's go around the room. I don't see anyone new, which is great. So, or good or bad, doesn't really matter, but it's always nice to have people new. And let's start with agenda. Is there anything in particular, because we don't have a theme today, is there anything in particular people want to talk about? Or any projects they're working on? Like Kim, have you worked any more on your Bloom's taxonomy work?
Still looking at it, trying to develop the concepts.
Okay, Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, I'm not going to share my screen because I don't think I have that fixed yet. But on the HTML export panel in the inspector, the export file name.
Yes.
Show me how to set that with either export code or action script programmatically.
All right. Let me write that down. And then we'll go to that. It's easy.
I mean, it should.
I do that every time.
Okay.
Set. All right. Okay. Anybody else have any comments, questions, thoughts, ideas, concerns, interests? If not, we can move ahead. All right. So what we'll do from a theme perspective, while it's not planned, there's been several community members over the last few months that have been after me to provide a demo on how to create an index in Tinderbox for terminology within an export file, which I dutifully, now that my doctoral dissertation draft is done, I could actually spend some time doing other stuff. So I pulled that demo together yesterday, and if you guys are all open to that, I'd like to walk us through that and step by step and show you how I did it. So cool. But let's answer Dave Rogers' question first, and then we'll do our 10-minute with Tinderbox, and then we'll jump into the broader discussion. So Dave, let me pull up a clean file here and share my screen. And Dave, for those that are watching, can you share with people the context of the question? Like, why do you want to change the HTML export file name?
Because it changes every month. So it needs to change programmatically. When the month rolls over to March, I need it to be March_2024.html.
Got it. Okay, so let's play with that. So we'll say month. So let's say it's like March.
Objection. You want to put the year first, Dave. So it'll sort.
You want to, Dave.
Okay, but so I'll just call this thing for March and this for February. Okay, and let's just explain what the HTML file export name is at this point. So when you're, Tinderbox actually was, if I'm not mistaken, really was started with the whole idea of blogging in mind and helping people, be able to create and manage that whole blogging process. And so a lot of elements of Tinderbox are, let's go ahead and article 1. Let's create a couple more notes. And I'll show you how I've been breaking it lately for this very reason, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and drop in some notes here, like that. And so I'm in map view right now. If I switch to outline view, essentially, let's suggest like these are articles that Dave is doing with his blog. And so this is article 1, 2, and 3 in March, and this is article 1 and 2 in February. And he wants to be able to make sure that the export file name maps. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that. Now, when you're in Tinderbox, there is a concept called path. So if I click Command 1, and I open up the document inspector, and I go to the properties inspector here, and I type in the word path. Okay, not parth, path. Okay, this gives me the path to the note. So you see the root of Tinderbox starts at the /, and then so the path of this note is March. If I click on article 1, the path of this note is March/-1. So that's the exact same way if you were to be looking at a URL. If I go to Identity Praxis, let me go to my website and just show you this. Click on an article. That's the exact kind of same thing you see. I gotta speed up my web browser. Come on. Okay, when that loads, I'll show you. So that's the same thing you kind of see here. These are this is the folder in my web browser, 2024, the month, the date, the year. And so this is the same kind of path that you're seeing in the internet web browser that you're seeing in Tinderbox. And so occasionally, and we won't go into the details of the hows or whys right now, but occasionally you may want to manually change that that path name, like Dave is requesting. And so the way to go about doing that is you have a HTML export. I'll show you in 2 places. You have, if you click on the export tab, you have a field here called file name, right? And that file name, if I go back to the properties tab, is essentially this HTML export file name. Okay, so the HTML export file name is equivalent to this field right here. And you'll notice right now the value is blank. And so when that value is blank, Tinderbox, one of the beautiful things about Tinderbox is Tinderbox will assume every attribute has its default value unless otherwise told. And so in this case, the default value of an HTML file name for a note is its name. Now, when you want to change that, and you want to change that programmatically, you could do it via rule, you could do it via an edict, you could do it via actions placed with it.
It would be like
an action, okay. Or you do it via an on-add, okay.
Yeah, when it creates that month's container.
Right, or you can do it via a template as well. But in this case, he's doing it via an on-add. So let me show you how to do that. So if you click, if we're going to add the on-add, and let's go ahead and move these out of here so we can show how on-add works too.
And your superior level, it's in the year 2024. So the 2024 container, every time the month rolls over, there's an edict in 2024 that creates the new month. And then there's an on add in 2024 that sets a bunch of attributes for that new month.
Got it. So let's just, for the sake of fun right now, we'll go touch this year. We'll create we'll call it publication year. Okay. And so let's say, this publication year has been populated with 2024 through another on add or another function. So for example, when you add March to 2024, this gets automatically populated to 2024. And we can actually show you how to do that too. We can create an on add here. And what I would do if I were me, I would actually not be doing this manually per folder, but I'd create prototypes. But if you went here and said on add publication year equals 2024. Okay. So if I were to go and move these out of the container 2024, and let's clear that. And let's go ahead and add to February publication year.
Okay, well, let me stop you before we go too far. The idea is the whole thing is automated. So when 2024 rolls over from the root value, an edict creates 2025. And in 2025 there is a prototype for each year. And
fair enough. But that's a lot of automation. I'm just trying to show some of the basic mechanics first.
Right.
And then you'll be.
I don't need a okay. I just want to set HTML export template to.
I know you do, but I'm also trying to show to those that may not know anything of what they're talking about, like what an on add is or anything like that, how that works. So the on add says when I add this February to the 2024 container, you see that February automatically got 2024. When I add March into that, you'll see that March also got that too. So that's how on adds work. So what Dave's asking for is how does the on add of March then add the month to a particular article or something of that nature. So let's go ahead. And again, there are other ways to do this, but I'm just going to go and hard code this a little bit, and I'm going to create a thing called month. And so let's say when I now want to add an item to this on add is it's going to say on add publication year equals publication year parent and month equals name, just for fun. All right. So what's going to end up happening here? So, oh no, not month equals name. Month equals name parent. So what I'm also trying to do in this methodology is separate all of the individual elements so that I can parse them out later if I want to. So now if I go add article here, we'll go publication year. Oops. And again, I wish I had set up a prototype. It would have made life easier, but we'll go like this just so we can say it can work with all three. All right. So by now adding these three articles to March, what that does is that automatically populates their month is March and their publication is year. And then what you can do, if we wanted to then further that, we could go back up here and we can modify the on add here that says, oh, and then here's another trick, by the way. You see how I'm running out of space here? So if I go to system and I say on add, I can actually increase the lines of space if I find my code is needing that. So now I've got more lines to work with in my on add. And I can say, now I want to say HTML export file name equals, and then what do you want it to equal? You want it to equal a / presumably plus your publication year.
I appreciate everything you're doing, but this is not what I want.
Okay.
I want the container 2024, when it creates the creates a new month container, when it creates March, that the on-add action of 2024 calculates the date. I'm stumbling over the date thing. I can create the container for March with the current month and everything, and I can create the container for the current year. But for some reason, I'm stumbling over creating HTML template, export file name. I'm struggling with the date action code to set that attribute to.
Okay, let's do this. So can you share your, okay, because I think you've got code that I'm not seeing. So can you share your screen?
Well, we'll try this. This never works.
Yeah.
Again, open system preferences. And it's in there. It's allowed to use my screen. It's allowed to use my camera. I can't share my screen. I haven't fixed that yet, but it's okay. We can move on to the next topic. I will play with it some more. So
before you do, if you look, you have notes with the exact same name, which is an issue I had. Article 1. If you are in preview mode, what's Tinder? If you're in, say, if you go to March of your March note and click on Article 1, and then change from text mode to preview mode, what's Tinderbox going to do? All right, so
So I'll explain the problem that you're experiencing so that people see that too.
Yeah,
okay.
My problem's solved, but when you wrote notes with the same name, so you know.
So let me share what people is doing. So let's say I had two notes with the same name and they're in the same structure here, right? And I haven't futzed with the HTML file name right now, and I run into this problem all the time. So if I go to the show preview, right, and I try to preview this note, you see how it automatically jumped from this article 1 to that article 1? And let's go ahead and show you the first one. And then we'll go and type this one, the second one. Okay. Now I'm selecting on the second one and I'm wanting to preview the second one. But when I do that, it automatically jumps to the first one. And the reason why it's doing that is because Tinderbox has defaulted to its pathway for previewing an article is just like I was showing you. This is analogous to Dave Rogers' issue. It was showing you it's knowing that it's following the path that it thinks this HTML is going to, and so it's following the path. Root file to article 1. Well, the first article in the hierarchical list is that one. And so there's a couple of ways you need to do. You either have notes that have completely independent names, which is and so if I go here and I do that, now that one shows because article 1 ASDF is independent of article 1 there. It's not the same name. So Tinderbox is not getting, I don't want to say it's getting confused. Tinderbox is following the path to the first article 1 in this context. And what did I just do? There we go. Okay. And so that's why that's happening. Nothing wrong with the software. It's being working exactly as it's designed. Now, my result for that, or how I do that, is I actually, to Dave Rogers' point, change the export file name. Now, my strategy for doing that is I have automation for this. But if I were to use a stamp, I'd say change export name, file name. And I would say, for me, I've defaulted on using HTML export file name. And I personally use ID. Okay. And it might be helpful if we do this. Let me pull up my downloads folder, just so people can see what's happening here. Create new folder, temp folder. Okay. So you'll see here on my hard drive, in my downloads folder, I've created a user Michael Becker downloads TBX temp folder. if I go here and I tell Tinderbox, I don't want you using the default standard folder. I actually want you using documents, downloads, this folder as for the for where I want you exporting the folders. So now let's watch what happens when I do that. When I click note 1 and I hit preview, you'll go here and see Tinderbox has outputted a file to my hard drive called Article 1, right? If I go to Article 2 and I hit preview, Tinderbox has now outputted an Article 2 to my hard drive. If I go here and I hit preview on this one, Tinderbox has now outputted Article 2024. If I go ahead and add in a, let me go to Tinderbox, templates. So I've now added in the HTML template that actually processes children. And I'm now going to say, I want this note to be processed with the HTML template. And so now when I preview this article, hit preview, it gives me the preview of the article. And if I go now look at the article, you'll see, oh, actually, excuse me, I'm going to preview this one. So now the path to this one is 2024 February Article 2. If I go look here, you now see I've got a folder, February 2022, February Article 2. So that's the path. That's what when we talk about paths, that's what we're meaning. Yes, Dave Rogers.
I was just going to let you know, Mark answered my question. I was trying to programmatically create the name, and I could never get the HTML on it. And I thought I had to do some string manipulation, and there's a separate attribute for HTML export extension. So I just added a line for that, and that solved my problem.
That's perfect. And that's in the chat.
I had to get the year, and then yeah, that's in the chat.
Yeah,
so.
And by the way, just so people where they see that is right here. So if you want to change that, that's right there.
It should have occurred to me by seeing it in that field,
and that's the
attribute, and
right.
I never made that connection.
Okay.
And
so if you're adding that attribute to there, you can do that. But to answer Dave, to Bill Schwartz's question, so when I'm looking, and now let me move these down into here into February, and so let's say now I'm in February and I preview Article 1, and now I go here. You'll see now Article 1 is there under the February model. Now, if I try to preview this February one, you'll notice that, I'm going to click this Article 1 and preview it. It bounces up to Article 1 because what Tinderbox is doing is it's hitting the first Article 1 and say, I got it. It doesn't know that there's another Article 1. So in that context, what you need to do is you need to change the HTML export file name. So Tinderbox sees this. Ooh, why did that happen? Not sure what I just did that made that note disappear. Oh, somehow when I was in preview, Mark, and I accidentally moved that note onto Article 1, that made that note disappear. Never seen that before.
All right, so I got another method now, which is good to know of how to.
But let me show you. Let me show you how I've solved that problem. Now there might be other. Number 2, and then let me re-enter. Not sure why that note disappeared when I moused over them, but okay. So how I've solved that problem, you'll see here's another, is I actually have action code for me that changes the HTML export file name and puts the ID on the note. So if you're now here, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And this works for me. This may not work for everyone else. So if you look here, you'll now see that this file name is changed to the actual ID number of the note. So when Tinderbox goes and previews that note, it actually works. So there's Article 1, there's Article 2, because the paths aren't getting confused. And if I go look at the output, there are those 2 notes. And personally, I don't. Go ahead.
So just move over to text mode for those notes now. From preview to text.
Which over here?
And now click on a different note. We've got the ID. Have you changed? Okay.
Like this one.
They still say Article 1.
Yeah, their name is still Article 1. What's changed is their HTML export file name.
Yeah.
And I made that export file name their note ID. So for me, what that does in my Tinderbox efforts is, because I have thousands of notes that have the same name, introduction or index or whatever. And by having it, and I know with 100% certainty that the note ID is always going to be unique. And so I just use the note ID as the unique number. And then that way I always know I'll never run into that preview issue that you were experiencing.
Yeah, just interesting. You don't have any use for looking at the term file name, because now it's some gobbledygook, it's an ID number. It's not descriptive,
right. I mean,
and that doesn't matter.
I personally don't.
Okay.
Right. Because when I'm in Tinderbox, I don't need to, because I can be looking at the notes. And when I'm looking here, I don't rarely ever go actually look at the actual file on the hard drive because I don't need to. And programmatically, I understand it. So that's what's happening there.
Okay.
Right. There are other ways to do that. If you wanted to actually be able to, watch this. Let's say instead of doing my file name this way, I'm going to change the stamp and I'm going to make it name underscore plus
start date or something
plus, right? Because the goal here is I need to know that the export file names are unique. So now if I've done that, I've now made the export file name, the name and the ID number. And if I go look now at here, you'll see now the file name is Article 1 and the ID number. So now if I preview, and if I preview this one, I don't get that bouncing ball that we saw before. And if I now go look at the hard drive, you'll now see that the paths are actually the name of the article and then its file name. Its ID number. That's another way to do it.
Okay, I happen to like this.
You happen to like it?
Yeah, I've been making
good.
Very
glad to please.
Making, unique file names, and now I can leave my file names alone. I don't mean
yes.
file. I mean name.
Yeah, you can leave name. You can have name be
anywhere.
Duplicates. Yeah, you can have names duplicates everywhere, and that works out really well.
Yeah. So I solved the preview issue by changing the HTML export name.
Yes.
Okay.
And then again, I'm sorry I was not understanding your question, Dave Rogers. I wasn't trying to be obstinate.
No, that's not your fault. If I had been able to share my screen, you would have known instantly what I was trying to do. I just described it wrong. But Mark pointed out that there's two parts to it, and I think I've got it fixed. I will put it in my dummy blog where I test everything before I break the marmot, and then I'm pretty sure this will fix it. And everything will be automated now. Just like we did a Zoom meetup a couple of years ago in July, and you showed me all the different things I could do to automate stuff, and it was going so fast that I couldn't keep up. Well, I think I finally achieved that now. So
awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and so just for those people that are now catching up with this, this issue started. I don't want to call it an issue because it's not an issue. This experience started popping up when Mark moved over into the 9.5 build of Tinderbox, when we started doing the new pathway export functions. And so Article 4, just to reproduce that issue. So if you have a note that is the same file name as another note that's in the same path. And so we'll pop these into the same path here like that. And so if I try to preview that, it's going to jump up to the first one in the outline order because it sees the first one, it matches, and that's what it's going to show you. And again, as the solution that we've just devised is all you need to do is you can either manually do it with a stamp, or you can add it to that notes. That note, you can automate it by adding it to a script or a rule or some other ways of doing that. And so by now applying that stamp to these notes, I've got that and it works. Okay. Now the one thing I would advise is if you do use that approach and you come up with a convention, one thing you could do, because you don't necessarily need Tinderbox constantly rewriting this file name all of the time. So there are ways to keep it from constantly doing that rewrite, which make, especially when you get like tens of thousands, tens of, or 10,000 notes or more in a file, that constant rewriting of that could cause some performance issues for your system. So it really depends on how you want to do it, but you can put an if statement in here. You can say if HTML exports file name does not equal ID, does not equal, how about name? And there's a reason why I'm suggesting this approach too, and I'll show you that in just a second. If it does not equal that, then I want you to do this. Okay. Now, the reason why you might run this stamp, and here's a similar thing that you might experience. So let's say I go ahead here. Oops, I don't want to hit save. Let's say I now go ahead and I copy. Let's just make sure we're right. So you see this article is article 1070560. And now I'm going to copy this article 4 and make a new version of it. Well, look, I've now got the same problem that I had before. This article is the same file path name as this article because I copied it. And so now if I try to do it, I'm going to end up experiencing that same thing. So what you want to do is in your automations, if you were to actually put, rather than do this as a stamp, you put this in the automations. You say if export file name is not equal to the name plus the file name, then do this. Then what that does is with the new note, and do preview, go here and hit apply. You'll see now this new note has been changed because it wasn't the, it knew it wasn't the note, the ID number from the note before. And so it gave it its own. And so that I ran into that problem all the time because I would copy notes of the same name. And because I manually changed the file name path, I need to make sure that Tinderbox is updating that file name path if I've made a copy. So, and when I talk about doing automations like that, let's now just add a prototype and show us how to do that. So let's say I go here and we create a prototype called pnote. And in pnote, we add to the edict like that code in the edict. So now my file name is going to be constantly running. And if I now add that to every note, pnote, and just so we can see visually see that that is been added to every note. There we go. Like this. So every note's now got this file name. And so now this edict is running off of every note because I've now used a prototype versus manually doing it for each note. And you'll now note that every note now has its own unique file path. And if I now copy this one and I now have a new article 3, you'll see that this note has automatically changed to its new file path name. So that, Bill, that's how, if I were in your file, that's how I'd actually automate doing that. So you're not manually doing it with a stamp.
Okay, I missed something obvious. How did you assign that new prototype to all of the pre-existing notes?
Oh, yeah. That's actually a cool little trick. So if you right mouse click on the little rectangle in front of every note, the prototype list pops up.
Yeah.
Right. So if I've created a new note here called test note, and I want to quickly add that prototype to that note, I can just go like that and now add that note. If I want to do multiple notes at once, I select them all, right mouse click, and I'll just change it right now. I've now changed every one of those notes to HTML prototype. Go like this. I've now changed every one of those notes to the pnote product. Right. Select as many notes as you want, right mouse click on it. Now you can change the prototype for every selected note.
Can a note have multiple prototypes?
No. A note can only have one prototype. At a time. A note can be assigned multiple different prototypes at different times, but at any given time, it can only have one prototype.
Yeah. All right. Okay, I'm just thinking I've got different notes in a file with different prototypes specifically. So I just can't go add a
Well, you
new
can. Well, you can. So let's do this. Let me show you. So we'll call this one P Note 2. And so you can visually see that one's changed. Because if you got, and I'll give the bicycle one for that. So, and let's call these ones P Note 2, right? So you've got these different, so you've got these notes here, and you now want to add, the P note, this action code, to every note that's got P Note 2. Because of the idea of inheritance, any changes I make to a notes prototype will inherit the change. A note that has a prototype will inherit that prototype's code. So if I go to P Note and I'm like, okay, now I want to add this file name modification to all of the bicycle P Note prototypes, I can just go like this. And let's just show you right now. If I go here, you'll see, okay, if I go this and add there, you now see that node has that code, and now all the bicycle notes are now going to be having that same effect. So all you need to do is change the prototype for the notes that you want to have that effect, and they'll all automatically change.
Okay. And all I need to do is, so I've got multiple prototypes, is take the lines that are highlighted right now and paste them into the existing prototypes.
Yep. Now, the one thing that you want to be careful with this is, and since we're doing that, is there are some special characters that you need to be concerned with within paths, right? So you don't want to name, that is, let's do test note 3. You don't want to, 32 is fine. You don't want this to be your name, right? That's the danger of using, that's why I only use IDs, because that's that in HTML path lore, that designates the next level down. So if you have that as your file name, that's gonna mess up the path. So you wouldn't want to use so in your file, if you're using that stamp that I've just provided here, where you're using name, you don't want to have you don't want to have forward slashes, you don't want to have parentheses, you don't want to have brackets, got any kind of special characters like that in the file name, because those are kind of internet reserved characters for paths. So that's the only caveat if you're going to choose to use name the way I did here. You might want to find, and we can come up with other patterns if you want that would make it work for you. Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, if you put an emoji in the name, does it export as an emoji? I actually don't.
I actually don't know.
It works fine in text, in $sign text.
Yeah, I actually don't know. Where's my emoji keyboard? There it is. Let me grab that. Here we go. Copy. I don't know, but we'll see.
And preview.
Yeah, to Mark Bernstein's point, this is where I have a glorious time causing problems. But a lot of this is just experimentation. Let me find my folder now and see how it exported.
Dave, what made you think about
downloads? Hang on. I'm sorry, Bruce.
What made
yeah,
you
it actually came through into the file name.
Good.
Didn't know you could do that. I don't know if that will break anything or not. Maybe it would. It depends on your context. So there's some things that, kind of like, you can do it, but do you really want to? And kids maybe don't try this at home. Yeah, you can jump off the roof with your bike, but may not be the greatest idea.
On a blog, you want to. Just I recall I had a problem once, and you had to escape it or something. You had to do some funny thing, but so I haven't done it since. But I discovered it works. So I've been
right. But the point being is, because we're talking about under the hood internet stuff too. You can have absolutely emojis or anything like that, or special characters like a hashtag in the name. That's not a problem. I can go like that in the name, no problem. The issue is you may not want that to be the path name if you're dealing with a lot of export.
Yeah, I think you have a point. Maybe you don't want it as the first character.
or what? Yeah, Mr. Bernstein, you want to give us the right direction?
This is something that's changed substantially in Tinderbox fairly recently. In the original design, we were accommodating a world in which a significant number of web servers were running really early versions of Windows because they existed and they were cheap, and that's what you turned into a web server. And so, in fact, we originally set it up so that if you had to have file names no more than 8 characters and extensions no more than 3 characters, it would work. And fairly recently, meaning something like 10 years ago, the rules on URLs were changed to allow things like characters that aren't letters in English or numbers to appear in file names. And we said, okay. And quite recently, there was a strong sentiment that Chinese file names, which are now supported perfectly well, really ought no longer to be prohibited on export. And this caused trouble because people who were using Chinese names ended up having exports which had no HTML file name default because everything was considered a character you couldn't have in a URL back in 1997 or something. So that enabling Chinese file names now makes it reasonable to put emojis in file names.
Awesome. Now, although Mark, I'm not wrong though. There are certain characters like // parentheses that you kind of want to stay away from.
Remain.
That remains.
They're illegal in URLs, so you can't put them in file names that you expect to turn into a URL.
Or you manipulate them in the back end in some way, like we're doing here. But that can be tricky. So you want to be careful with that. All right, everybody. So Bill, did that help? It sounds like it did.
Yeah. Yes, I got something out. It seems a little bit esoteric, maybe, but for me, it was useful. So thank you.
Awesome. Cool. So let's. And I just put the more if. Yeah, exactly. That is the issue, Mr. Eddie. Is once the black magic is forgotten quite quickly. All right. So, any other comments, thoughts, questions on this idea of export file path name management? If not, we'll jump into the 10-minute Tinderbox highlights review that was scheduled. Anybody? By the way, go Niners! I'm wearing my Niners beanie just for the sake of the 49ers tomorrow. So, okay. So, shall we switch over and play with the highlights function? You all want to make that transition, or somebody want to talk about something else? Thank you, Dave. I do too. Or I do too. Go Purdy. All right. Yes, that does mean the Patriots are not in the Super Bowl. Okay, so last week, if you recall, I talked about a methodology that using a stamp, you could wrap text around. And again, I won't review this in detail, but if you see here, I have different codes in my text, and I reviewed last week. That if you applied this stamp to that text, and then and you'll see I have the stamp resolving to the text log note, so that I can actually manipulate the code. So I'll go ahead and delete this and show you what it looks like. So I can actually manipulate that and not screw up my sample file. So if I go ahead and apply that, you'll see now that all of these codes are wrapped by a hide span. Or if I do it with a different type of stamp, I can do that with a hide variable. I think that one will work. You'll see I'm hiding it with the display none span. So that way, when I go preview the notes, you'll see all of those variables disappear out of my text. So that's what we reviewed last week, and you go watch that 10-minute video if you want to see it. The next issue, though, is I wanted to talk about the benefits of the highlighting, syntax highlighting feature that Mark introduced. I think it was like 9.0, 9.2, somewhere around there, which is really, really valuable in this context. Because as you're reading, and I'll show you, and the reason why it's valuable for a number of things. One is you'll see here I've got like some includes in my notes as well. I've got some citations here. I've got these span things, and if you just have it as black and white text, it actually makes it really hard to read the text. So if I'm going through and reading my text and all of a sudden you see this gobbledygook code, that gets really hard to read. The other thing that is a challenge is if I've now published this out to a Word file, someone's edited it in Word, and now I want to copy their edits back into my Tinderbox file. The mistake that I had along the way was I'd forget that I had these codes in here, and I'd paste over the top of my inserts, or I'd paste over my citations, and then I'd have to go reinsert all my citations, and that became a real pain. So I personally use highlighters as a way of giving myself visual representation that there's something here I don't want to overwrite, or there's something here that my brain can learn to don't read, just ignore it and move to the next word. And so let me show you how that works. So if you, and I'll just show you a simple example, test note, and then I'll show you an example. So let's say in this test note, I've got, here is, it is a wonderful world. Okay, so I've got text in a note here called it is a wonderful world. And if I open up the hints folder and I go down to highlighters, you'll see that Mark has put in syntax and markdown as some standard highlighters, highlighters, and you can also create your own. So we're going to go ahead and create your own, and I'm going to call this a test highlighter. You can call it anything you want. I'll just call it test. And in here, I'm going to create a pattern. And so you see here, it says, here's the pattern that Tinderbox is looking for. And then it's going to ask you, well, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to change the color? Do you want to change the size? Do you want to change the boldness or anything of that nature? So let's grab these just so we can, so let's go here and we'll think, okay, so we want to type the word pattern. And let's say for the sake of now, I just want to look for the word it. And if there's the word it in the text, I want to make the color red. And if I go back here, I can just double check that I'm doing it right. Color colon. And so it's lowercase. And so if it's color, if I see the word it and text anywhere, I want to make the color of that word red. So now if I go back to our test note here, you'll see I've got a word it here, but it's not red. So you're going to oh, okay, well, what do I do? What you're going to do there is you want to go to the attribute, syntax highlighting, and you want to tell Tinderbox what highlighting pattern do you want applied to this note. And so I'll go ahead and hit test and apply. So now when I come back here, oh, that should have worked. What did I do wrong? I thought I was being
off. It doesn't matter, Michael, if it's lower or uppercase.
It should. It might. Let's double check. So I've never done it like there. Let's try that. It could. That should have worked. All right. I didn't plan on this not working.
A leaving space. I'm not sure if it's on purpose before color.
No, the space is fine. What did I just do, Mark? Because I have one that works.
Can you go back to the ones that do work?
Here, yeah. Let me grab the pattern. Let me grab a pattern that I know works.
Because there's
like
that
this.
plus equal, the dot plus or something.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's go like this, and I'll type the word it. And we'll make it red. Damn it. All right. Well, let me show you the one that I know works, and then we'll fix this out. So here, and so here you'll see I've got all this code in my log file now. And I've got different patterns that I've created here. And these are all regex patterns. So if you see a caret, any characters in between that caret and another caret, I want you to highlight it in blue and make it black. If you see the patterns of the variables that I have in it, I want you to highlight them in yellow and make it black. And so now if I go to this note and apply my citations highlighter to that note, and apply, you'll now see that these are getting automatically highlighted, and those patterns are not. So if I go here and do the same thing for this note and apply the citations, you'll see those, and it looks like I've got to fix the spans here. I'll show you in one that actually worked here. Oops, damn it. I had it all demoed perfectly, and then it wasn't working. Okay, so, and let me show you one that I actually have it working on. Pull up my dissertation, because my patterns in this demo file for some reason are not consistent. And I'll give you one that and then we can backtrack forward and see what is wrong. Yeah. So here's an example of one where the highlight is actually working. So what you can see then is that way when I've got my pattern right, and I must have messed something in the file, you'll see here that it's highlighting that text in white, making the variable black. So that way when I'm reading the text, I can easily just ignore the highlighted areas and still kind of gracefully read the text. So let me pull this.
Press
what? What? Well, I could, but then I can't edit the text in preview.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right, because I'm reading the text for the purposes of being able to edit. So that's how that works. Now let me go ahead and pull in the syntax, this citation file, because you see I've modified this between when I did it for real and I made the demo. So if I go like that, whoops, I think my pattern was just off. Paste citations. Yeah. So now if you go here, now that I've pasted in the actual correct pattern matching, you'll see that all of my variables now are getting highlighted in green as I'm reading the text. And that facilitates my ability to kind of read the file without getting confused by all of the text. You know, same with this log file here. Yep.
Can you go back to your test highlight?
This one?
You can go down to the highlight definition.
That one. Yeah, I want to see what's wrong. What did I do wrong with this one? I thought you could pattern match actual words, but maybe I'm wrong. Let's do the word wonderful real quick.
I'm just getting an idea why you're doing this. I've been playing with HTML just to learn it a little bit.
Yeah, so there you go.
Ordered lists. And now you're showing me a way that I can put syntax in my text.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. So, now I don't do it that often because I don't like mixing structure into my text. Now, by the way, and this might be the issue. Let's copy the word it. The end of the line. This might be what we've just found by typing the word it here. Okay, so that's a different pattern. So let's do it here. So it's wonderful. And let's make the word it. We'll make that one bright blue. And let's, for fun, let's make its size is 24. There you go. Okay, now it's working. I don't know what I did before. Okay, So you see that pattern now lets me modify. And the great thing about this is that pattern's now modifying my ability to see it. Yes, Mr. Rogers.
Does all that export as HTML? Will you get the markup for all that?
Let's double check.
No,
you do not. You get pure. You get pure. So this is pure. The highlighting is purely for your visuals ability to read the file. So I personally find this incredibly useful when I'm doing my research, and I just want my eye to be able to skip. Like I know my eye can skip over these texts, or again, as I'm saying before, when I'm copying, pasting edits back from my editor back into this, I know not to paste the stuff into the Word file and overwrite my citation keys or overwrite my if you do that, you say it's saying on the all factors model as shown in model 3. Well, that as shown in model 3 is being derived from or actually see in and here, let me show you this. So seen in this is a different file. So if I go here, let's do this, and I'll show you. So I've got a cross-reference short here. If I go on, say, this note here, and we'll just say cross-reference short, we'll create that attribute. And I'll say this is going to be like table 1. And I'll add the path of that note here. And if I copy that, and now paste this into this text here, like that. So in all factors model 4, as shown in this path, in model 1, I did this. So now if I do that, you'll see it says see table 1. So so this allows me to have the include the value include automation, my citations, variables in my text. I can use that stamp I shared you last week to be able to hide those in the outputs if I want. And for the purposes of facilitating my ability to make the file maintainable and readable, I use highlights. So that was my Tinderbox in 10 minutes. I don't know why the highlighting wasn't picking up. Maybe it just Tinderbox just needed time to recognize that.
In watching it, I think Mark had indicated you might not have indented initially, and then after you indented, it looked like it was the wrong case because it looked like it's page sensitive. So I think those two factors combined. Yeah.
Again, what you'll find more often than not is it truly is you, or it is me, not you. It's not Tinderbox. It's more often the user that is doing something that's not that the tool's not understanding, like I just did. But that was my Tinderbox in 10-minute demo I wanted to share with you all. So was that helpful in the application of highlights, including my my mistakes, which is fine. And then, by the way, too, if you want, you can either modify and make those highlights go away, or you can select all and then just reset the text, or you can go to Format, Font, and I'll show you up here. If you go to Format, Style, and set Standard Size, Standard Font, and that should reset everything for us.
Except for the color, which is Command Control 5, I believe. We'll make the selection black.
Command Control 5. Nope. No. All right. We'll have to, let's see. Format of color. Let's see. Font style. It looks like it's.
Is it still highlighting?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it could be.
Have to turn off the syntax highlighting.
Oh yeah, it's making the highlighting's work, but I see what it did. I modified the size. That's how it worked. So if I make this now, so it's still highlighting. That's why it wasn't changing. But the size fixed. So let me do that again. So if I show you and I say, I made it size : 48 for for its. And then we go back here and do it. You'll see now that that's 48. And then if I remove that 48, you know, I can either change the size and make it 12 and do it automatically that way. Or as the highlighter, I can remove that because I don't want that highlighting anymore. I don't want the highlighter changing or manipulating the sizes. So then I can just go to the font styles. Show you all again. Just go to the font styles, standard font and standard text, and then that will change that. Or I just highlight it all and hit Shift Option Command T, and then that resets it. Okay, we can keep going on that. Yeah, Dave Rogers, you had a question?
Can you show your CSS hide note, and where is that CSS style sheet assigned? I mean, what? So
Yeah, sure. So let me go ahead and so you see here. So like there's this note and there's this log note here, and you've got and you see I've got all these little. So in this case, I want to change from the inline styling to the CSS. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to reapply my hide with CSS note. So you'll now see the spans are using CSS to hide. And if you go to the HTML file, you'll see right here, the style is the CSS hide style.
Okay.
So I'm embedding the style in the template. So now when I render that, they get hidden. And if I look at the export code, there's the CSS right there.
That just occurred to me. It's another. I use an external style sheet, and now I can put a style.
Yeah, you can use style sheets in your Tinderbox file.
Yeah.
And even better than that, let me give you a little trick here, which I do a whole lot. Is I go here and I say CSS style, and I make that a string. And then, because you all know with my files, I've got a node called tbxconfig. And in here, I get the little gear. Where's the gear? You see the gear? Oh, no, the gear's over here. Nope, it's not. Where's the gear? I don't know. We'll just do that one for now. Okay, so in my tbx config file, I'll say CSS style. And let's say the default is not hiding. No, let's say the default is like P color red, just to show that. So let's say your default style is P color red. What I'll do in my template is I'll do an if statement in here, and I'll say if and let me just show you so I'm not hacking up a real file and making a hack job of it. If you look in my main template here, you'll see what I'm doing. So in this one, yeah. So you say, if the style equals CSS APA, then I want you to do that. Otherwise, oh no, that one's the wrong one. Maybe my email one's got it. No, let me find one. Got too many Tinderbox files here. It's going to be right here. Yeah, here you go. This one. So if the style does not equal empty, then I want you to make the style this from the value. Otherwise, I want you to make the style to some other default. And often what I'll do is I'll make that style I'll make that style defaulting to whatever the tbx config is. So if you haven't actually assigned a style, then you can add that. And then the other thing I do with my files is I actually have a Boolean in my files that says use the style. So if you go back here, you'll say if is use style equals true, then I want you to apply the style strategy. If not, then don't. So that way I have layering levels of complexity that I can manipulate my different files and interactions. Okay, well, the 10 minutes went a little long because it went beyond the highlighting, trying to stick to the highlighting. I think we did the 10 minutes and about the highlighting about 10 minutes, but we addressed a couple other things. Okay, does that make sense for everybody? Okay, so anybody, before I show the next thing, anybody else have any thoughts, comments, questions? Reactions, interactions, anything? I'm trying to go slow, like slower than I normally would, because I don't want to leave anybody behind. All right, if not, I will show you this Julia Child cooking show demo. Okay, so the purpose of this project is Summer in the forum now for months has been chasing me down to explain to him how I create indexes. And so let's say you have you've got a Tinderbox project with you've got a Tinderbox file with two projects, project A and project B. And in project A and project B, you're working along, and you have, on this particular note in project A, you've got terminology associated with this note, personal data and self-sovereignty. In this note, you didn't have any terms associated with it. In this note, you did identity. And so then what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to create an index when you're exporting the file that shows you, what notes was personal data associated with. Well, personal data is linked to note A, project 1A and project 1C. It's also linked to project A, 2C, etc. So you'll see that like the term identity is linked to two different notes in project A. Now, if I go down to project B and look at its index, you'll see that identity is only linked to one note in project B. And if I actually go down to the word identity, you can see here that the term identity is actually linked to three different notes in this file and two different projects, twice in project A and once in project B. So what Sumner has been looking for is, like, how do you do that? How do you actually link notes to different notes, and how do you manipulate and be able to create indexes so that when you're exporting out into a project file, you're able to show how many notes have been where notes have been indexed within that particular file. Let me pause there in terms of the setup and the context. Does that make sense? So, anybody have any questions on what I'm trying to accomplish there?
Michael, I have a simplistic question. When you were in your previous screen, clicking on it is going to show you all of the notes in that index for that particular term, or one at a time?
Which previous screen?
Well, it's when you had the table up. So you were,
like that.
Okay. Okay, so here it's just one note. And when you click on the index, what are you going to see?
So this is not interactions. You can't interact. So I was talking to Mark Anderson prior to this call. Right now, this doesn't let you navigate through the preview mode. Doesn't necessarily let you navigate through your Tinderbox file. This is, as you know, this is for export. So let's assuming I'm exporting a report out of this file. And in the appendix of the report, I wanted to have an index of all of the notes in that file, all the sections in that file that were using that term.
Okay, and then you have to go to them manually.
Right. And then the way to go, if you were in your Tinderbox file and working, you could go here and then use Tinderbox's linking functions to navigate to them this way.
Right.
Right. So Tinder, the preview is not designed to be a the preview is not a browser. It's not designed to be a navigation window net per se within your Tinderbox file. Although I do think there is a way to do it now that I think about it, that I can revisit, because I just realized they do have a presentation model that I hadn't thought of until just now. But that, so we won't have time for me to fix that real time right now, but there is a way to make that preview clickable. I just got to pull something from my previous file.
Yeah,
So there is a way for me to make this clickable.
That's a helpful clarification, though.
Yeah. So there is some code that I haven't added, and I just remembered. I knew I'd done it before, and I just remembered how I did it. So I will look that up when we're done with this. So does that make sense? So what I'm trying to accomplish here is, I'm managing multiple projects in my Tinderbox file, and in the Zettel cost and lore, I'm trying to create like only one note in the file that defines the term identity, or one note in the file that has a person called Bruce Gale, right? And if I've now used that note in multiple projects, I only want that note indexed in the in the context of that project, not in multiple projects. Because does that make sense? So when I run the index, I only want the index for the use of the term identity in project B, and the index for the use of the term identity in project A, not across both of them. If I want to see both of them, I click on the node itself, and then I can see where it's linking to both of themselves. Does that make sense? Before I kind of want to make sure people understood what I'm trying to achieve before I show you how I did it. God, you guys are like my classes. I kind of, I'm trying to make sure that we've got understanding before I move forward. Anthony, what do you think? Is that a decent setup, or have I just not set it up properly?
As far as I can tell, it seems correct.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's just, I just want to make sure the objective. Yeah. I just want to make sure the objective is clear. Now, let me show you how I did it. So how do you go about doing it? And it requires a couple of steps. So one thing I did was, first and foremost, I have a function in the note called, and there's a bit of automation that I want to be able to do. So let's go ahead and say I'm going to create a new project called Project C. Okay, and the Project C is automatic. If you look at the action code of Project C, it's going to get what's called a project ID, and its project ID is going to be its note ID number. So that way I know that a project is, now this is the root of a project, and the root of a project is the project's ID number. And so then I can go in and say, let's call it like note C1, note C2, note C3, and then if I go down here, note C1, C1. 1, 2. Note right. Okay, so you see, I've kind of automatically started creating a note, and you'll see what's happening here is these notes are. I haven't put that there. These notes are inheriting the project ID of its parent. So if I actually look at the export code here, I'm saying, hey, grab the project ID of your parent, and that parent rolls all the way up to get the project ID of Project C. So now every note knows every note here knows it's part of Project C. That's the first step, and that's really important. Then I want to be able to do is, let's say I want to say in Project C, I want to add the term identity. So I want to be including the term identity associated with this note, and I'll add some more Ipsum text. So let's say I'm writing along, and I'm like, oh yeah, this note I'm talking about has the term identity related to it. And let's say I'm down here and I'm writing along, and I'm using Text Expander to do those automatic inclusions. Now, here's where it gets really fun. And I've shown this to you guys before in notes that I've done. If I say architecture. So let's say I'm going to create a new term. as I'm writing along, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm now writing about this concept called architecture, and I want this note to be able to be related to that. So the second I do that and I click away, that note's edict is going to kick in. It will kick in just a minute. Did I just break it? Let's see. Oh, here. Great. I have a typo. That's why it didn't work. Okay, and let me go down here. Where was it? Project C. There we go. All right. So I had a typo in my in the form. This was, if you remember, this said create L term, and it should have been create link term. And she'll now know what my action code did, and I'll show that code to you in just a second. Where did the architecture one go? Here it is. You see, the second I typed in architecture here, it then created the term called building. And let's say I also go in here and I type in the word building, just so now that I've got the, right? So as soon as I type in the word building and click away, the edict triggers and it automatically creates the word building for me. So now I have the term architecture and building automatically linked to this note. And if you look at the function I have tied to my P notes, it's saying create link term ID. And what that's doing is triggering this function here. And let me show you what that is. And I'll give you all this file so you can deconstruct for yourselves later. What that's doing is you're saying, look, take the ID number you're passing to me from that particular note. You know, hard code the container for terms, hard code the container for the link type, the prefix. I've got other versions of this that all of this is dynamic and not hard coded, but I didn't want to overcomplicate it for this demo. And then I'm saying now for each item in the term list up here, I want you to take the container and take the prefix and create a variable for that path note. Then I now want you to go create that note, and then I want you to assign the prototype, and that's a typo. That assign the prototype key term to that note. Okay, and then what I want you to do is I want you to link to that note. So what that function is doing is every time I type something into my term value, it's automatically creating the notes for me, and it's automatically linking to that note. So that's the next step. So now as I'm writing, and this gets really powerful, as I'm doing my writing, I'm like, okay, I need a term called architecture. I can now pull this architecture term off, define that term really quick. You know, this is what architecture means, then close it and then go back to my work. So now I can kind of stay in context as I'm working. So that create function is really, really powerful and useful. Now what I want to be able to do though, is I now want to be able to create an index for these notes. So I'm going to create a new note and we'll call it index project C. And I'm going to apply the prototype P index to that. Okay. And so now I have action code that's running in the P index. And let's take a look at what that action code is saying. And what that action code is saying is, okay, just like the other notes, inherit the project ID from your parent. And now I'm doing a conditional and I'm saying, if you want me to update the index, click this Boolean, say update index. And I want you to go grab all of the terms, all of the values from the term notes of everyone descending from this project, that project ID. So I want you to go look at the value of every note that's got elements in its term attribute and populate that into this list. And then what I want you to do is I want you to then create an index that adds the prefix to every one of those terms. So then that way I'll be able to match to these note names. So now watch happens when I trigger that code. Okay, so that's going to get triggered if I've done it properly. Let it run. So you'll now see it's gone up and it's captured the 3 terms that are in this project. And now I'm going to go up and tell the agent to run. And then I've got some other code that's saying, go and index term agent contains name, right? And so what's going to happen now is in just a second, when Tinderbox is done running, that should let me see. Let me grab this one just to make sure, because I might have done some code here that I'll have to fix. Index C. Yeah, and so yeah, I'll fix what that code is. So then that what's it's doing then is it's now gone ahead and pulled out, and I'll delete these and have it rerun. Okay, it's now going in and finding all of those notes, and let's go ahead and redo that. There you go. So it's now finding only the terms that are referenced in Project C. So that's what's happening there. So now that I've done that, and so we're methodically going through it. I've created my project. I've created some code that lets me have Tinderbox automatically generate terms for me. I've then created an agent that will automatically go look at all the terms used in a particular project, and then we'll run and serve that agent. So now what I do is I now have a list of the items that are actually in Project C. There's 3 terms in Project C. And so now what I do is I then go and look at my my templates. And so on my index template, you'll see what I'm doing here is I'm saying, hey, Tinderbox, what do I want you to do? When you actually run this template on this particular note, I want you to go collect the children of the agent. So go collect the children of the agent, which is going to give me the ID numbers. And I want you to correct the original ID numbers. So not the alias numbers, but the ID numbers of the actual original term notes. What I now want you to do is go collect all of the ID numbers of the project. So you're going to go and grab me all of the ID numbers of every note in this project. I then want you to start building my table, item, description, index. I then want you to start building the index section of that table. And what's happening here is I want you to populate the short title of the term. I want you to, so I'm saying for every item that's in a V item is the children. So I want you to populate the name of the term, architecture, building, or identity. I want you to populate the text of the term, architecture, building, or identity. And then this is where the indexing happens. I want you to create using the intersect operation. I want you then to create a V index that only gives me the items that intersect between the items in this index, i.e. these children, that are also intersected with the project. And so then that way, I only get the use of those terms in this particular project as opposed to across all of the projects. What I then want you to do is populate the wrap those items around with the path writers. I then want you to close and complete the table. And so now when we do that, we have an index. So the key kind of element there is, and essentially just kind of wrap it up, what we've accomplished here is you have Tinderbox kind of automatically creating the notes for you. You're using the attributes that are then that you're able to then trigger Tinderbox again, which notes are using or associated with those terms. You're then asking Tinderbox to create a list of the items that are actually used in this project, as opposed to every project where that term is being used. And so then you're asking Tinderbox to only give me the notes where that term is being used in this particular project, as opposed to say all projects across this particular file. And then that's how you're getting that. So the key is then for making this happen is really this kind of intersect function. So you're essentially creating 2 lists. The list of the items, those terms used in this particular project, the list of those terms used across any project, and then you're only looking for the intersection for this particular project, and that's how that works. And I get that there's a lot of nuance in terms of HTML and list building and other operators like the .each operator and the .intersect operator, and how and why you'll want to do the paths. And I'll figure out, make those clickable as soon as we get off the call. But that's how you build. That's how you build indexes when you're working with multiple projects in a particular Tinderbox file. Thoughts, ideas, reactions? Dave, you're laughing at me.
It's very cool, Michael. I mean, you are a very sophisticated user of the tool, and I don't have a use case that matches yours, but it never fails to impress me. And I learn a lot, not everything all at once, but just by osmosis over a long period of time sitting here listening. I'm beginning to understand more and more about how this program works and what it's capable of. So much appreciation.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the biggest index, the biggest use, I believe, of what I've just showed you is if you're writing a report or a book, right? Or you're writing, you're wanting to create an index for your blog, right? Where and that it might be something we want to implement sometime in the future, not for next week's or 2 weeks from now session, but someday. If you actually wanted to have an index for your blog, of here are all the terms that were used in a particular blog article, and and here's the index for that blog article. What sections within the blog, what sections within that longer article in my blog were those terms were used. That could be a use case, but it might be a silly one, a little overkill, like bringing a Testarossa to just a simple Sunday morning drive. But the biggest use case for this, I believe, is you're writing an industry report or a book, or some form of hypertext. All righty, it is exactly 10:29. So we've covered 3 things today. We covered the use of HTML file name. We covered the syntaxing, and we've covered building an index in Tinderbox. So we actually covered quite a lot today. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, reactions? Proposals for next week? For our 10 minutes in Tinderbox, what other things might you guys want to see in future demos? And does any of you want to volunteer actually doing one? No, you're laughing again, Dave. You got Tinderbox skills. You can do one.
Well, maybe I'll be doing that on the 24th. We'll see if I can get my share screen to work.
Okay. All right. Okay, Steve, Anthony, you guys got Bill, you guys, and Kenneth, you guys, anything else? Maybe Phil, last comments before we shut down for the day?
I'm just thinking of saying thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I think.
All right.
Thanks,
yeah,
Michael.
I'm sorry, Bill, go ahead. You think what?
That I can speak for the group, so when we're silent, that there's still an internal thank you for sharing.
No worries. I'm just trying to slow down too, because I know in months and years past, I've like done the overwhelming thing. So I'm trying to get better at that.
Michael, so, I've been gone for a few weeks. The schedule change messed me up a little bit, and now I've recovered. But yes, you definitely, you're not a 78 today.
Okay. Very good. Very good. All right. Well, go Niners. Let's hope for the super. Again, you can support whoever you want, but I really want the 49ers win tomorrow. Will be fun. And we'll see you all next week. All right, everybody. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.